Past epics never vanish completely, and blood still drips from all their wounds, even the most ancient. Sometimes the most remote or hostile beliefs and feelings are found together in one city or one soul, or superimposed like pre-Columbian pyramids that almost always conceal others. By the end of episode 9, I alluded to something of what
Octavio Paz essay
seemed to express here, only I called it the collision of cultures. Even then, such a term sounds a bit too academic and out of touch if you really think about it. The face-off that is Cortes vis-a-vis Moctezuma was nothing short of vicious. It is a story without saints, but what it lacks in sainthood, it makes up for in impact. Hernán Cortés happened to the Americas. He not only happened to them, but he happened to happen to the Americas in true historical flashpoint fashion. Love him or curse his name in malice, there he stands in Mesoamerican, Spanish, and modern Mexican history all at once, a timeless sentinel keeping watch, and on occasion, banging his billy club along the cell's bars, banging again and again, sending sounding ripples in time, still somehow striking Mexico's fallen Tenochtitlan, still echoing behind her borders to this day. And of course, Cortez's impact had to take place in the Yucatan Peninsula. This particular part of the earth, the Yucatan Peninsula, is to the rest of the natural world what the Balkans were to, say, maintaining the homeostasis of Europe in the 20th century. The Yucatan has always been a punching bag for nature's destructive side. All you gotta do is ask Littlefoot from this movie. I cried every time. My hope is whoever has made it this far in watching this particular video and allows themselves to ponder such ideas concerning their morality of conquest, human sacrifice, cannibalism, what it all says about being human, and where we fall into the mix of it all, whoever that may be, my hope is that they may take my commentary with a grain of salt. It is best to find out for oneself, kind of like shedding the reliance on an interpreter rather than learning the actual language. I hope you look into this stuff for yourself, especially if this topic is met without any fragmented, preconceived notions or even some remote baseline understanding. But first, a message from our sponsor, Present. At least for now, right now, soon to be history too. But for real, the present. It is such a cantankerous thing.
Turn down for what? Bruh.
Seemingly on a daily basis, we look around us noticing this overt onslaught of currently transpiring historical events peppering us about the head and neck with some of that Dick Cheney hot buckshot. Today, nothing seems to make sense at all. Sometimes you look at where we are, in the here and now, and it never makes sense. With history, at least we can attempt to be the wiser in gathering dates, events, individual or group actions, perhaps motivations behind those actions, consequences, things of that nature. In doing my own reading, it seems best to gather as many facts of first-hand accounts from the start, then properly laying them out to form a linear, hopefully cohesive timeline, inspecting it for trends or anomalies, maybe even seeing how both may challenge or support the status quo of the time. Supposing I've been a good little student and I have gathered what I've found to be sufficient, scrutinized the timeline as impartially as possible, and come to my own understanding of what is generally accepted and agreed upon knowledge, then I may begin to see something more. Maybe. Not always, of course. Almost like one of those magic eye pieces of op art so popular in the 90s. Remember those? Everyone had their own signature stance or squint, and personally taking on the difficulty of seeing the hidden three-dimensional shape behind the mishmash of hyper-colored dots and wavy patterns. Well, I think history is like that. You look back at where you have been as a species and all that has happened on Earth over time. The whole lot of it. The mangled, absurd chaos that it is.
Oh, hell no!
Only with history, face to face with the present, using whatever it is that emerges from that mangled heap out of the magic eye, not modifying it or tarnishing it with our own crossed eyes, only now, and this is where the two diverge, projecting that same unaltered abstraction forward. Then I may begin to see some things. Once again, maybe. And I don't mean begin to see some things in the typical 21st century Western liberal arts sort of understanding either. If you don't know what I mean by that, then take this stupid example. When I use the term blue hair, what image is conjured up? If you're a boomer in the United States, you'd say a senior citizen. If you're a younger millennial, or maybe just looking at your local barista, you'd say you think this. Well, guess what? You are both right.
Nothing is impossible!
In each subjective reality embodied by each individual's subjective experience, there is a truth to their statement. And who are you to say their linguistic template for making meaning of reality is askew? To the gulag! That is in essence what I learned at our universities. They are right relative to an objective reality, subservient to their subjective experience within it. There is such a thing as objective truth existing as an independent reality. In other words, truth isn't tethered to the times. Okay, all that was a digression, but I feel it was worth explaining. Let's get back to it. What did I mean by begin to see some things? Of course, nothing is crystal clear, and I don't think anyone can tell the future, but anyone can listen to a song and pick up a melody. What I'm saying is I feel I've been picking up on the melody a little bit. I'm saying I feel I've grown acquainted with the Ghost in the Machine, its deathless song, and with the melody by which human beings are so entranced. Still, I'm no historian, just a fan. I actually only began to be interested in the subject when I started traveling. Things require explanation. To that point, what I found about history, in an unintentionally lurking and definitely passive sort of way up to now, is just this. By the way, if you haven't noticed by now, in pretty short order, I went from attempting to write about the conquest of Mexico on my laptop to my very own personal treatise on that. Yeah, I realize that. It's my channel. I will give all the unsolicited thoughtalogues I want. Let's get to the point. What I've learned about history is this. Whether using history as a sort of cultural measuring stick or moral touchstone, or simply for entertainment purposes alone, anyone will be forced to confront a total bloodbath, and then, having truly beheld it, are forced to sort it out in some inner way, integrating it somehow to their worldview. And that's, in part, what attracts me to it. Alright, that last quote is from the best fiction writer of the 21st century. I love this sentiment, but I do not completely agree with it. I'd say nonfiction, as far as history is concerned, speaks to us, or better yet, makes us confront the painful search for what it means to be human. This isn't immediate, of course. It seems to be piecemeal. In part, the real gravity of the whole confrontation almost seems to settle itself in the lesser-traveled corners of the soul. The emotional fallout following this unintentional, sometimes unexpected, revelation is more of a byproduct. And how couldn't it be, given all the bloodletting in humanity's body politic over the ages? Some other useful bits I have learned in history, thanks to the communists, the fascists, the inquisitors, the crusaders, the Mesoamerican emperors, all them, the whole lot of them, is one really important, often overlooked axiom. Every last one of them thought they were doing something good. Most despotic rulers truly felt they were ultimately adding a net good to the moral balance of the universe, if not immediately, then for the generations to come. So what if people were harmed in the making of all that net good? I mean, anything worthwhile always comes with a price, right? That is where this principle becomes pernicious. It's all simply for the greater good. All for that nondescript, amorphous net good. No need to get bogged down in the weeds with these confounding ideas. Just place your trust in us. After all, we're the good guys. We're good people like you too. We only have your better interest in mind. Sound familiar? People who can simplify a complexity are either geniuses or silver-tongued salesmen. It's genius if not oversimplified, and useful concerning practical matters. It's a salesman if the simplification process is only bent toward power. You can spray paint a pile of poo to look like ice cream, but a spoonful will make the world of difference. At this point, if you're still here that is, if you're thinking I'm going to end this video going all pro-Cortes, anti-Aztec apologist on you, go ahead and turn me off now. Or leave a comment over it, that's cool too. Hey, I know I'm just a bum on a bike for a couple months and I got a YouTube page. Among adventure writers, the obligatory rebel without a cause is a worn-out trope by now, to say the least. Oh, how us nonconformists are all really just the same in the end. As I get to retell this story and the rest of the moto vlog episodes to come, I would rather avoid such a deliberately constructed false choice binary type of take on this. Looking at this through the epistemological lens of what it actually means to be human, much like a mosaic of both cultures violently clashed and smattered across the floor, to me, at least seems a bit further removed from willful blindness. You know, that one phenomenon keeping our in vogue fallacies on life support today. I know just calling them in vogue fallacies is opaque and is sort of self-congratulatory, self-appointed, as though I'm the one-eyed king in the land of the blind, coming down from on high with a booming voice. You get the idea. You should get an idea of what I mean. It is that tired and true demagoguery rampant in the divisive us versus them falsehood of our contemporary tribalist thinker. It is tribalism's main rhetorical premise, also their prerogative to use at will when best seen fit. What others, just as ambitious and cold and calculating as Cortés later noted, was just how this caudillo, appointed to do no more than to carry out a small excursion and set up modest trade in Mexico, ended up decapitating its leadership and replacing it with himself, very much enriching him, by the way. Even if it was legally dicey given the violation of the proper Spanish channels of power at the time, and even if it was at the expense of some meeting an awfully unsavory end, what ultimately happened was the composition of one solid playbook as to how to bring down an empire of millions with an army of hundreds. In the spirit of notes one may find scribbled in corners of book pages, I would like to mention this before we go any further. Plus, let's mention it just for the simple fun of stirring up controversy. I call this era the Age of Exploration. Previously, it was known as the Age of Discovery. Previously, as within my lifetime, deeming it Eurocentric. The name got caught in the sliding grains of this psycholinguistic quicksand. No one has gone out and burned eyewitness accounts or redacted official documents. No, they've just reframed it in total. Call Cortés whatever you wish. His cunning, his diplomacy, his role as chief military strategist, his ruthless Machiavellianism, all those elements of character are so haughtily reviled by any given 21st century suburbanite are simultaneously all the very same prerequisites required to bring an empire to its knees. No, this is nothing more than the pursuit of vainglory at the behest of these rapacious, pointy-helmeted Europeans. And maybe that's so, by today's standards. Soon enough, the standards of tomorrow will have us each indicted with the same blind alacrity we see today. The social sensibilities quicksand takes full advantage of slippery surfaces. It consumes. And for all the detractors of those pointy-helmeted Europeans, it is quite the convenience they're no longer here to draw the requisite breath to even be able to simply defend their honor. So far as Spanish colonialism goes, the conquest of Mexico and later large swaths of the rest of the Americas, I think it is best us mortals stick to grading history on a curve. Practicing even some rudimentary form of historical empathy, even basic humility, is currently in short supply as I sit here creating this video in 2022. Quick tidbit from my life. Just 1 year I worked as a contractor at Apple headquarters in Austin, Texas. I was new to the team and getting to know coworkers. I noticed one of them shared last names with a Spanish explorer. It was not well received that I mentioned this. Afterward, I was left wanting to talk about the explorer still. He was sent by Cortés to prove Baja California was a peninsula rather than an island, as it was once believed to be. It did not matter if the historical figure was more obscure than Cortés. For what it's worth, Bernal Diaz, fellow conquistador and chronicler/historian to Cortés, even claims this distant Spanish explorer wasn't even there during all the fighting, when the conquest was still uncertain. Oh no! This Spaniard sailed, explored, and let us not forget, most likely committed some act we disapprove of today. In truth, his contribution was providing cartographers a crisper image of the landmass. His story even ends with a twist. All that didn't matter now, evidently. At least that's the feeling I got for even making mention of the link. We live in a free country, right? That was in 2018. What was once a slight rebuff seems to have gained momentum. The propagators of this sort of all-inclusive mainstream ideology in the West these days, they are quick to disavow what they see as false glory, conquest, and colonization. And P.S., this all seems to really be more of a rebound effect more than anything. just as reactionary as riding down a pothole pockmarked back road while simultaneously handling a half-cocked revolver with a hair trigger. That's us lately. The disavowal of colonial roots has left many of us without the proper reconciliation of the past. Instead, revisionist historians fill in the blank spots in the fertile minds of the uninformed, preferring the easy-to-manipulate past as viewed through a keyhole rather than simply stepping inside completely. Sure, they may deconstruct, but with every deconstruction comes its successor. There is no zero, per se. It is so tempting to look at these events in a vacuum as though nothing has happened before. This isn't to excuse them, of course, just to open the lens's aperture a bit, open up the periphery, see more. Looking at this timeline, Constantinople fell in 1453. This was a traumatic blow to Christendom, still felt to this day, some could argue. The Crusades to them was like the Wild West to us in the States in present day, not too far out of historical reach with which to find some cohesive identity. This was still a holy war, the West's jihad against Mesoamerica. Just take a look at what Vasco da Gama did to his enemies of the faith in his heyday. In terms of the conquest of the Mexica or Aztecs, and their Mexico, and even the invading Europeans of the 16th century, I wouldn't say either were exactly sliding off the backside of the rainbow. Both civilizations had faced bondage of overlords and come out victorious. The auxiliary native forces were a large deciding factor in Cortes's conquest. Remember the Tlaxcalans I mentioned before? Well, they were still an independent kingdom, defiant of Moctezuma and proud. To this day, there's still a joke about it not existing. Probably some resonant rivalry, even to the present. That's just a pet theory of mine. Malinche. She left no diary and was only known in history through the records the Spanish kept of her with Cortes. With the Tlaxcalans, Cortes shared a bloody greeting, but later alliance to take down the Mexica, aka the Aztecs once again. They were instrumental in the ultimate toppling of the empire. The Tlaxcalans, and especially Malinche, mother to Cortes's son Martin, and polyglot translator on behalf of the invading Spanish. With the Romans, their hyper-militarized society delivered first conquest, then their civilization. Aqueducts, amphitheaters, a bread dole, sometimes circus and games, but nobody is getting up in arms over being called a Byzantine after the Western Empire fell and Rome continued on in the East. At the time, to be called Byzantine was considered a derogatory term. They saw themselves as Romans still, so why no more hard feelings over this term? Because no one is really affected by that anymore, nor does anyone find identity in it. We, however, are still hearing the reverberations of Castilian's first impact on the Americas. What's its replacement? The state? Certainly not past institutional operatives implicit in the former and unevolved power structure of the past. Better we liberate ourselves from the iron grip tradition has held over us, as though a society with no social constraints would not be ruled by the most powerful and ruthless. Continuing to flirt with centralized power or toe the threshold at the entryway of the cult of statism isn't wise. And by statism, I mean where some special interests may coerce the government gun to take aim at dissenters. Considering, of course, the state is the supreme authority over God, or even just the individual. I'd say it's kind of like taking the tiger out for a walk on chance it's not too hungry today. In a cosmological sense, these New Age believers hold true to the idea power is the only durable, incontrovertible truth we all have. All else is a human construct, detached from any laws of nature, of course. And herein lies the inflection point, where we cross over from Montesquieu to Foucault, where there was once agnosticism, now docile acceptance of this article of faith. Only from here may the new convert begin their ministry. Only from this animating notion may they begin proselytizing. From here, others are now agents of this dogmatic principle, or just old stalwarts, which is to say an obstacle. When a hammer, dissent dresses itself as nails. Okay, the hammer and nail analogy is a bit off though. After all, these are materials for construction. A more inclusive analogy demands a wrecking ball. As most times in history, new converts abound with zealotry, summoning the ire once held in abeyance. Now they prowl about in search of a chance to exert some power of their own upon others, no less sharp set on society's rejiggering, on their terms, as any other frothy religious splinter movement of the past. Only this Kool-Aid is locally sourced. Maybe the Jonestown Massacre was a bit much. Couldn't restrain myself from the old Kool-Aid cliche. I think you get my point by now. In the new convert's view, we must dismantle all the systems of power. The only real truth. This is pure deconstructionalism. That's all fine and dandy, of course, till the reality of nature abhorring a vacuum begins. Back to Cortés. I'm not making a pro case for methodically hacking down the Aztecs. The more dynamic idea I would like to posit is this. How is our current state of affairs any different than the dilemma of Dorian Gray? Seriously, I see some curious similarities and one main difference as we continue to entertain house guests like postmodernism, solipsism, hedonism, pretty much everyone from the house of ism and their respective prescriptions arm in arm, of course, as we delight in playing host to these deceitful guests, sliding our belongings into their pockets and speaking out the corners of their mouths. As we give sanction to all this activity, we may even retain our youth and vigor. However, our recently painted portrait starts its descent into growing increasingly more and more of a hideous record of evil. This is something the advocates for the isms would rather have some recognize as shameful. The difference with Oscar Wilde's debauched Gray and us is the protagonist's desire to keep his portrait hidden from the world, horrified someone may see it. We, on the other hand, do not. Shame is the driving force wedging itself between us and him. Only shame is not seen as a sort of autocorrect mechanism for a healthy society to flourish, but rather as a weapon to be wielded, as a means of inspiring intimidation and control. This difference in regard to shame is why Oscar Wilde's The Picture of Dorian Gray is a timeless piece of literary art, and this, passing propaganda. And this little tidbit I shared about my life in 2018. What was once glory to the family name, a family crest to be revered, has now become a yoke of shame, rather not talked about. And if so, properly admonished, disdained, and processed through the gears of public derision. Strangely enough, much like the victims of Torquemada, check out the Inquisition's castigation for the merrymakers of the town. Try those iron rubs of goodness on for size. Try being bound to that thing, cast out to walk about the streets, facing the public. Sure, this is a bit exaggerated to compare, but public derision is all the same. And all that for what? Is it some karmic retribution? Cosmic balance in question? Or just a reaction from what came before, a rebound effect, forming the span of one human lifetime. Just another disembodied talking head attempting to breach the gates of each of our skull-sized kingdoms.
You and all your silly English kniggets. What a strange person.
Probably just reactionary. No different than following the vicissitudes of the arts through the decades. Deriding the dead, whom we see as villains now, really only says one thing. All the best people who have ever lived are with us right now. Forget the dead. Remember, we are the inheritors of this world, and we are very much alive, beaming at the opportunity to express some misguided appeal to virtue. This new supposed humanist universal belief system has manifested in our culture as a sort of civic secular religion, sometimes covertly, oftentimes overtly. Remember all this? This was in 2020. These people thought they were kneeling for social justice.
We're not rioting, God. We're not shaming anybody, God. We're just humbling ourselves before you.
Thank you, George Floyd, for sacrificing your life for justice.
Father, in Jesus' name, you get the victory. Father, we ask for forgiveness from our black brothers and sisters for years and years of racism, of systematic racism.
To me, it looked a lot more like a congregation. What seems to be overlooked is the practice's roots. All that organic underwiring deeply gripping the earth's soil, profoundly entangling our worldview to a dogma long abandoned in our far-off, dimly lit past. We find this idea now made manifest, completely aligned to the doctrine of ancestral sin, the idea that individuals inherit the judgment for the sin of their ancestors. We find this doctrine in antiquity, highlighted by such works like Beowulf of the English and Antigone of the ancient Greeks. What's most odd is the insistence on redrawing this deliberately discarded idea, spearheaded mainly by those who sow seeds of discord among us. Absolutes rule the day with little to no room for nuance. This intransigent binary code, devoid of clemency and brimming over with absolutes, is loosed upon the rest of us. It is not for nothing either. It has a purpose, for sure. The function of the binary, which is, by the way, the only actual human construct in all of this from the start. Anyway, this binary divider helps to separate the wheat from the chaff. The former being the oppressed and the latter the oppressors. Simple, huh?
The less I know about other people's affairs, the happier I am. I'm not interested in caring about people.
Not so much. Within it is embedded a call to action. So how about it then? What are we to do? Definitely not what this charlatan suggests. All right, so let's get to the point already. What's the big idea? Well, the implicit idea here is that we are to atone for the sins of our fathers. Or, depending on whatever immutable physical feature one may possess, demand penance for past pains inflicted. This idea is regressive. It masquerades as progress, all the while creating its own liturgy, incantations, saints, heretics, and, when truly redeemed, apostates of the faith. The idea of punishment doled out to the culpable's descendants over past misdeeds hoists itself over their shoulders, yoking itself with an unflinching fastening, commanding we deliver at one standard worldview deviation closer to the day of execution by stone. Who among us, meat-eaters, has personally snapped the chicken's neck, or stabbed the heart of a swine? Who among us has leapt into the beast's cell, stabbed its heart, and butchered the animal one quarter at a time? I knew this one kid named John who lived on a farm when I was a kid in 2nd grade at Lake Travis Elementary School. No doubt the school's named after me.
That boy ain't right in the head, is he?
Dressing like an 1800s white Anglo-Saxon Protestant and having a mullet on the weekends. Anyways, I watched his older brothers do all the killing and butchering once. These were not domesticated young boys. It was truly an awful sight watching them. But I eat meat, always have, and have no intention to stop. There is something of a disconnect there, huh? Boom. The cognitive dissonance brought on by domestication. It's left us in this state. There's something to account for when we have literally grown out of touch with our own food. Then, on chance occasion, we are forced to face the brutality of the world when it seeps through. We must reconcile with it when facing the more unbecoming inner workings of civilization.
So are you making one of your fancy videos that fast forwards or whatever?
Yeah, fast forwards.
What are you laughing about?
I don't know what you mean by a video that fast forwards, Mama.
Oh, you're not going to sit there for half an hour, and do the video.
On a brighter note, one of the things I love about my wife is that she takes nothing for granted. It is such a rarely possessed characteristic among most people. I say this because as I prepared for this video, I found myself noticing a few things. At every jingle of my keys or click of the metal part of my safety belt, I thought of European metallurgy. It all most likely came from here.
Okay. You're talking too much.
It wasn't a given that it would be European steel to arrive in the New World. But that is what has happened. The metal I feel in my life to this day in the Americas is still just as fixedly tied to its first steps here as it ever was, for better or worse, whether I like it or not. Back to Cortés. Once again, these were harsh times with harsh men. They really were different people in a lot of ways. I have noticed in myself I have a tendency to imagine people of past ages as more or less just like me, albeit different behaviors contingent upon whatever theism at hand. Different, but more the same, Yeah, that's not true at all. Consider this. After one of the first battles with the Mayas, the Spanish used fat, flayed off the corpse of a slain Mayan, placed it on a stick, cooked it till the fiery, dripping glob was thrust into their open wounds in order to cauterize them. When is the last time you cauterize an open wound with the burning fat of anyone? One European seeing another in the New World, while among only natives, referred to the other as Christians first. Faith was the great emulsifier in these lands, not a continent or any given European king. Both culture and all its practices and rites all hinged on a shared faith. Within the culture itself, there was no possibility to say discount the idea of a supreme being. Even the Aztecs, as profoundly difficult to understand today as they are, these first Spanish in the Americas were also unlike us in many ways. As for me, I come from English ancestry, who, when it comes to conquest, are not exactly spotless Christian saints. I don't revile them. That is a choice. It is by no means a sanction for atrocity that I've chosen not to revile my heritage either. Besides, that is a dull, one-dimensional take anyway.
Almighty God, we thank thee that thou hast vouchsafed to us the most holy... Jesus Christ!
I'd rather have a more dynamic and even-handed approach. Just like Geronimo said in episode 3, while living, I want to live well. If I have done so, I will have enabled myself to die well, too. Part of living well is not allowing cerebrally parasitic ideas to breach my thought life. Let one Trojan horse in, establish its foothold, and in time, through enough reinforcement, the city walls are doomed to crumble from within. The foothold, now the merciless oppressor's stronghold. We traveled at the start of 2021 as much as possible, because we're free people. The pandemic showed me a lot of things. Chief among them, we're all too smart for God now, until, of course, we are all too scared to die. We are a very death-averse culture in the West now. This wasn't always the case, not till we lost our faith. The dirty C word I'm not even going to mention here proved that to me. Tenochtitlan to the Aztecs, Mexico City to the Mexicans today, these are both places not scared of death like we are. Maybe an authentic virtue from the voices of the past.